What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO from Zero, back with another Retro Yu-Gi-Oh video, and in this video we're going to be covering another vampire deck, and this one is pretty cool in my opinion. This is Archfiends. Now, there are many different ways to build Archfiends, and I actually debated a lot about which cards to keep and take out here. I opted just to sort of play using the package of Terrorking Archfiend, Terrorking Archfiend, and Pandemonium. The reason why I like these three cards is because Terrorking is the main reason to play Archfiends. It is a 2000 attack point monster that negates your opponent's monster's effects that destroys by battle, which means that it's very good into something like DD Warrior Lady, as well as things like Sangan and Witch, and it is just a very strong card. I mean, Dark Balter, the fusion monster, sees play in a variety of decks. Just being able to get this thing out is very strong as well, and a big reason for that is its effect negation. I mean, the normal spell negation is also extremely good, but the effect negation is also just very, very powerful, and so Terrorking is like half of that. It also has an effect that can negate effects that target it, which can come up in certain situations. You do need to get kind of lucky because you need to roll a 1/3 chance on a die, but it is still kind of a cool thing that it has. And Terrorking Archfiend is actually able to revive your Terrorking if it's destroyed. So if you have a Terrorking in hand, you can pitch the Terrorking when the Terrorking is destroyed, bring back the Terrorking, and sort of retain that field presence. Also, if you're playing Pandemonium, of course, you know, its main use is to stop you from paying your Archfiend maintenance costs, but also a very important use in this deck is that when an Archfiend monster is destroyed and sent to the graveyard by a card effect, then you are able to search out an Archfiend monster from your deck with a lower level than the destroyed card. So if your Terrorking is destroyed by a card effect, you can actually search out a Terrorking. And if you already had a Terrorking in hand to bring back that Terrorking, you now have that Terrorking with an Terrorking in hand to back it up. This combo is, in my opinion, so strong that I almost played 3 copies of Deathstroke, but I was worried that that would brick a bit too much. I think in future builds, it's definitely something that's worth experimenting with, adding a 3rd Deathstroke, because also, you know, you get continual value off that with Pandemonium. So maybe it is just worth playing 3 and potentially bricking on it, because if you do draw Terrorking, it's not really a brick, because you're able to bring that Terrorking back. Now, the last piece of the Archfiend package that I really played here was Archfiend's Roar, which is a normal trap that I wanted to try out. It's a normal trap that says pay 500 life points, then target 1 Archfiend monster in your graveyard. Special summon that target, but cannot be attributed. Also, that's destroyed during the end phase of the turn. So the idea here is that, you know, if you Archfiend's Roar back a Terrorking gets destroyed at the end phase, you have a Deathstroke in hand, you pitch the Deathstroke, bring back the Terrorking. So it's honestly not that bad. And I'm not sure how effective this combo is in general. I do think that it's better here than Book of Life was in the zombie deck because, you know, with Terrorking on field, you're more likely to be destroying your opponent's DD Warrior Ladies as opposed to getting the Terrorking banished. So I do think that Archfiend's Roar will be online more of the time than like Book of Life would be. But I do think that, you know, this is more of a late game card, and in the early game it can be a bit awkward, especially if you haven't actually found your Terrorkings yet. So that's the Archfiend package that I sort of chose to go with here, but there are some other Archfiend cards you could play. For instance, you could play Skull Archfiend of Lightning, which is a very good 1 tribute monster that's 2500 attack and also has partial effect negation. You could play Lesser Fiend, which does count as an Archfiend monster, and thus pair well with Terrorking. It also deals with one of the biggest problems in this deck, which is Gravekeeper Spy. Gravekeeper Spy is really annoying for this deck to deal with, and if you do have a beater that can get over Gravekeeper Spy, that can be pretty good. But I mean, I just chose to go with this package. It was honestly hard enough cutting down to fit this package. But, you know, it's what I went with, and I do think that it is pretty good and a pretty good place to start if you're experimenting with this Archfiend deck on your own. For the other monsters here, we got Triple DD Warrior Lady, very, very powerful monster, and we are indeed playing Reinforcement in the army for a reason I'll get to soon. So Reinforcements pair with DD Warrior Lady, which can then give you effectively more effect negation, as this can deal with Witches and Sangans. It can also partially clear Gravekeeper Spy, can take out one of them, which might be worth doing. We've got the 2 Deathstroke, as I mentioned. We got Exiled Force here, very good pop. And again, we are playing Reinforced in the army, so it is good to play this card. We got Fiber Jar to reset the board. This is kind of awkward in this deck, as you are likely to be down on life points, since if you play a Terrorking without the field spell on field, you will be taking damage. But I do think it is good enough to have this sort of reset button that you should play this. This deck can also potentially go pretty neg on resources if your opponent manages to clear them. So I do think having this reset button is very important. We've got Double Rod and Captain. This is the main reason why we're playing Reinforced in the army. Terrorking has an annoying effect that it can't be normal summoned or flip summoned unless you control an Archfiend monster. Now, You could potentially just, play this deck a bit slow, get out Archfiend monsters like Archfiend Soldier, and then bring out Terror King on turn like 2, or I mean just later in the game than you would normally. But that's a bit too slow for my taste. I do like just being able to summon out Marauding Captain, special summon out the Terror King from hand, and just immediately have this threat on board. So I like Marauding Captain in this deck. This was an interesting tech that we actually saw in a Vampire Locals that I held, by the user Colgate actually played this deck, and I really, really enjoy it, and I do think that it is a very, very good way to play this deck, as it also gives you access to the powerful warrior package that you've seen so far. We're playing Sangan, Serpent, Drive Infected Virus, in which these are pretty standard in a deck like this. Just very, very good cards all around. We're also playing an Archfiend Soldier. I'm not sure how I feel about this. I wanted one more Archfiend name in case we didn't have Marauding Captain, and we just wanted to sort of set up offensive pressure, and pair it with Terror King. But I think, honestly, in the future, I might actually cut this card. I don't know. It's a bit too slow for my liking. And I think that, honestly, fitting in another Deathstroke here would probably be a little bit better. But you could definitely see success with Archfiend Soldier, if you maybe played more of a package of this, or focused on more of a beatdown strategy. For these spells, we've got Change of Heart, Dark Hole, Graceful Charity, Mirage of Nightmare, Monster Reborn, triple MST to pair with the Mirage of Nightmare, Painful Choice, the double Pandemonium, as I mentioned, and one Terraforming to search one out from deck. I like this ratio better than just playing 3 Pandemonium. I do think you do want to be playing multiple Pandemonium, as, decks are playing a lot of spell and trap removal in the form of, like, MST and things like that. So I do think the Pandemonium's, Terraforming ratio is pretty good here. We got Pot of Greed, we got Raigeki, we got the double reinforcement in the army, as I mentioned, and lastly, we got the Forceful Sentry. For the traps, we got the Archfiend Furor that I mentioned. We're only playing 2 of this because I do think this is more of a late game card, and you don't want to brick on this early. Also, we've only got 2 Deathstroke Archfiends, so if we don't have Deathstroke Archfiend in hand, this is basically just bring back a monster to be destroyed at the end phase of the turn. And so I don't really think it's worth playing more than the number of Deathstroke Archfiends that we have. We've got a Call of the Haunted as well, Imperial Order, Mirror Force, and Ring of Destruction. Now, I think also, if you don't want to play the Archfiend Roar, you could definitely bring in Torrential Tributes as well, as, Deathstroke will be able to bring back the Terror King off of a Torrential. Same with Pandemonium searching out a Deathstroke off Torrential, as these cards don't care if, it was your card effect or your opponent's card effect that actually destroyed the Archfiend monster. So I do think Torrential could be a good card to play here. It would also help against the Gravekeeper Spies as well. If your opponent flips up the Gravekeeper Spy on their own and brings out another spy, you can TT those away. We've also got triple Royal Decree here in the side deck against more trap-focused decks, like a Panda Burn strategy. It's very good. We've got Dust Tornado and Harpy's Feather Duster against more back row heavy decks, as well as a Breaker to deal with those as well. We've got Injection Fairy Lily as a bit of a big beater here if we want to bring it in, maybe siding out some of the Archfiend stuff. I didn't play it in the main deck, as I figured we'd already be low enough on life points, having to pay the maintenance costs here. But I think maybe it could be good to add in the future, as, from playing, I didn't really mind the maintenance costs that much. Most of the time, your opponent was clearing your Terrorking Archfiend before you really had to pay much of the maintenance costs, or, you'd just be in a winning position because you had Terror King out. So maybe it's good just to add back in the Injection Fairy Lily in the future. We've got Jinzo to deal with trap-focused decks as well. We've got Confiscation and Delinquent Duo here. In case we know we're going first, we can bring these in. I chose not to play these in the main, because I do think that, again, we might be lower on life points here, so you don't necessarily want to play 2 cards that are, like, lowering your life points by a lot, and potentially, if you're going second, they're a lot less good. So I put these in the side. Maybe, in the future, I'll find more space to cut in the main to put these in. But I do like these just to bring in when you know you're going first. It can be good. Kind of similarly to, like, Harpy's Feather Duster here. You can bring that in when you know you're going second. Same with the Noman's Crossouts as well. And that does it for the side deck. For the extra deck, we've just got the toolbox that everyone knows and loves from this format. But again, we are playing at a time when there was an unlimited fusion deck, so you could potentially just proxy out, whatever fusion monster you might potentially have at the time, just like in a Goat Room on Dueling Book allows you to do. But, we got the toolbox here. We got Dark Balter, we got Dark Flare Knight, we got Darkfire Dragon and Dragoness for their levels. We got Fiend Skull Dragon, we got Reaper on the Nightmare, we got Ryu Senshi, Super Robo Lady, Super Robo Yar, Last Warrior from Another Planet, and Triple Thousand Eyes Restrict. So I'm really excited to sort of show off this deck. I think this deck is really cool. And while it may not be like tier 1, I do think that, it's definitely tier 2 at least. And maybe with more tinkering, it can get even better. Okay, first game we got here is against Colgate, frequent guest on the channel, and also, as I mentioned, the deck breakdown. They're the one to sort of innovate the Marauding Captain play with Terrorking. So, pleasure to have them on the video here. And we are going to dive in. We do win the rock, paper, scissors, so that's pretty good. We will be going first here. And this is a pretty decent hand. I mean, we'd really like to have a Terrorking in hand, so that way we can fire reinforcements, draw into Marauding, or search out Marauding, that is, and summon it out. And we do draw Terrorking, so we could potentially go for that play now. I don't necessarily want to telegraph that I have the Terrorking, but in hindsight, I do think it would have just been better to fire reinforcements, bring out Marauding, summon out Marauding, bring out Terrorking, and then fire Pandemonium. We've got Deathstroke to bring back Terrorking if it dies, and we've got so much powerful spells, like once we've set up that board state, that I do think it would have been the correct move to do. Like, as unintuitive as it seems for this format, given that there's so many things that can punish when you overcommit early, I do think that in this case, given the amount of protection we have there Terrorking, this would have been the correct play. But instead, I play it safe. I just set the Deathstroke here because I don't want to discard for hand size at the end of turn. I do want the reinforcements online to search out Marauding. I think this was also a bit of a mistake, because, we want Deathstroke in hand to bring back Terrorking, and then we can also search out another Deathstroke with the Pandemonium. So I do think that I shouldn't have set Deathstroke. I was thinking about, sort of a clever play here, where if they attack into Deathstroke, I can summon out Terrorking, and then have it on board without having to go for Marauding. I can save reinforcements to search out, like, DD Warrior Lady later. But I do think this was a bit of a misplay here. Opponent's going to summon out Witch, attack into our set. It is indeed the Deathstroke there. And they're just going to set one, pass back to us. So we draw Sangan. We will pay 500 for the Deathstroke's maintenance cost, and then we're going to fire Pandemonium here. We're going to summon out that Terrorking, attack in to the Witch, and unfortunately they do have a ring set, so they'll target the Terrorking. Third chance that this will be negated. Unfortunately, it is not, and we take 2,000. Now, imagine if we had gone for the play where we had Deathstroke in hand. We would have been able to bring back Terrorking, attack over the Witch, and prevent it from getting its effect off. As is, now we don't get to do that. We do get to search out a Deathstroke from deck with Pandemonium. It's not the worst thing in the world. We also do have Sangame, which can get us into Witch, which can get us into another Terrorking later. But as is, this is a bit of a bad spot for us. Our opponent's going to bring out a DD Warrior Lady, attack into Deathstroke, banish that, and then attack indirectly for 1,100 with the Witch here. And we're kind of in an awkward spot. Our opponent's going to set one, pass back to us. We do draw Marauding, so that's pretty good in case we draw a Terrorking later. We can now fire this reinforcement in the army, getting a DD Warrior Lady in hand to deal with the Witch, but we're a bit behind because our opponent can just bring out a monster now, attack in for damage, and we're sort of losing the tempo war in this case. And I do think if we had committed the Marauding Terrorking first turn, we would not be in this situation. I think we actually might have been in a winning situation. Of course, our opponent fires a Graceful here, so with that coming, who knows if this actually would have been a good situation for us or not. They're also going to bring out a Yada, attack in for 200. We won't get our draw next turn. Luckily, we do still have things we can do. We've got the Sangan in hand, and it's pretty good just committing Sangan, attacking in for 1,000 here. And our opponent's going to fire a call, bring back a DD Warrior Lady here. A bit awkward. We are just going to fire this Raigeki here, clear the Warrior Lady, prevent them from actually hitting over our Sangan, and getting in for another Yada hit. Opponent's going to fire Mirage, set 2, pass back to us. We draw Terraforming, which can get out the other Pandemonium from deck, which is something that we do want to do here. So we're going to fire that Terraforming, grab that Pandemonium, and we're just going to attack in for 1,000. We want to save Marauding for if we draw Terrorking. We have a bunch of different ways to access Terrorking. We've got the 2 Archfiend's Roar. We've got 2 Terrorking in the deck natively. So I do feel pretty good about our chances of drawing into this at some point in this game. There's a bit of a mistake here. You can't actually fire MST after your opponent's selected the discards for Mirage. You have to do this beforehand. So, our opponent lets us, pick the 2 to keep for Mirage, and then they fire MST, but this is an illegal play, so, I offered to let them take it back because this isn't a super serious, tournament match here, but they just say, no, I'll discard. But I do think that if they had, fired the MST here, they actually probably would have been in a very, very good spot. They had Reborn to bring back the DD Warrior Lady to banish our Sangan, then hit in with Yatagarasu. This wouldn't be the end of the world, as we do have, Deathstroke and Marauding in hand, but they had Darkhold to follow that up with, to pop our monsters there. And, yeah, this wouldn't have been very good for us here. I think we actually would have lost the game if they had kept that. But it is what it is. They've got Rhoda anyways to bring back a DD Warrior Lady here. Banish our Sangan. But at least we do get a draw this turn because they don't have Yada as well. They're going to pass back to us. We draw Sinister Serpent, which isn't the best here. Maybe Sinister Serpent should be cut from the deck in the future. Yeah, it's just kind of, this deck doesn't really have too many discard outlets besides like Tribe Infecting Virus, and so maybe Sinister Serpent is not worth it here. But we're just going to sit the Serpent, pass back to them. They've got MST to attack their Mirage there, keep the cards in hand. They fire Pot as well, draw 2 more, fire the Raigeki, get rid of the Serpent, and they do summon that Don Zalug, attack in for 1400. So hopefully they don't hit anything too good here. They had Change of Heart, which is really unfortunate. We kind of wanted the Change of Heart to go for a big push here, as, you know, if we had summoned out Marauding Captain next turn, brought out Terrorking Archfiend, Change of Hearted the Don Zalug, that actually would have been game if they didn't have any back row to stop it. So we draw DD Warrior Lady here. We'll add back the Sinister Serpent. And we actually have a bit of a choice here. We need to summon out DD Warrior Lady, attack in to the Don Zalug. But the thing is, we do know that they are on Blast the Chain. So that could really come back to bite us, as they'd get a discard here off the Don. Now, of course, we have 2 cards in hand that we don't mind discarding, because, you know, we've already got a Pandemonium on field, and they've gone through an MST. I mean, they could have others. But, you know, I don't feel the worst about discarding Pandemonium here. And if they discard Serpent, that's even better for us. But it is a bit of a risky play. So I'm going to think about this, and I will just fire the Dark Hole here. Summon out DD Warrior Lady and attack in for 15. We could have pressed further, summoning out Marauding Captain to bring out Warrior Lady that way, attacking in for 27. But I don't want to play into like Mirror Force, and also, you know, again, if I draw Terror King, then Marauding is very good in that situation. They've got Saku though, so maybe this was a little bit of a mistake. Maybe I should have gone for 2 monsters on field here. But, you know, you live and learn. They bring out a Tribe Infecting Virus, so it wouldn't have mattered here either way, as they could have just popped whatever else they had. They're going to set 1, pass back to us. We do draw Reinforcing the Army, and it's a little bit of a tricky choice. We do go for Rhoda here. We do search out DD Warrior Lady. We could have gone for Exiled here and popped the Tribe instead. But that left us a little bit open. They can't clear the DD Warrior Lady in the battle phase unless we got like Blast with Chain, which they could easily have. But we just sort of have to gamble that they don't. They're going to summon out an Exiled Force, pop the DD Warrior Lady, and that will be the end of the game here either way. It looks like they had Solemn and Mirror Force, so yeah, if we'd gone for the Change of Heart play, it wouldn't have actually gone through here. So it is what it is. That is the end of game 1 there. I think if I'd gone for the aggressive play turn 1, it could have turned out very differently. But this is sort of something that you learn as you play these sorts of decks. You know, they require you to think in a different way than the sort of typical good stuff decks in Vampire format do. So I do think that, you know, going forward and testing out this deck more, I'll become better at it. And I think that if you sort of play with the deck yourself, you'll sort of figure out the best balance for, you know, balancing aggression and knowing when to push, given if you've got Deathstroke or not. We open Marauding plus Terrorking plus Terraforming. That is really good. We will just Terraforming here, bring out the Pandemonium. No need to commit the Marauding Terrorking to board yet. We can save that for later. We can just set the Witch now, pass back to them. Our opponent's going to Pot of Greed here. Draw 2, fire Graceful Charity, you know, pitch 2. That's about the best opener you could get. So, you know, our good opening might not matter here. Our opponent's going to bring out a Magical Scientist, bring out a Dark Balter here as well. Hit over our set, and unfortunately that will go through. We will lose the Witch, and our opponent will also attack for 300. They're going to set 1, pass back to us. We draw a Ring, which is pretty good. We're going to fire the Pandemonium here, bring out Marauding Captain, bring out a Terror King here. And this insulates us from something like a Ring play, like happened last game, and a Sacrifice Your Armor play as well. So, you know, we'll attack in with the Terror King. They do fire Saku, and for some reason, Saku does target. So we actually will be able to roll the die here. Opponent points that out, so, you know, we don't quite get the search yet. We will just roll the die, and unfortunately we get a 1, so it looks like we will get the search after all. So we search out the Deathstroke here, but we still are able to attack in to the Magical Scientist there, and I'm feeling pretty good about this. We set the Ring of Destruction here, and I think this is honestly a big mistake. So I think what I should have done is just fired the Reborn now, brought back Terror King, and just passed back to our opponent. The reason why I should have done this is because if they get like Harpies or a way to clear a back row, then they can summon out Don Zalug, hit over the Marauding Captain, and pitch a card from hand. If they pitch the Reborn, that's really bad for us. Reborning the Terror King here is pretty good. If they've got a way to deal with it, we've got Deathstroke to bring it back. So I do think it would have just been the best play to do. But again, I'm still getting used to the deck. I'm still not quite used to just, you know, leaving an overcommitted board on field. So I think that, you know, in hindsight, it's what I should have done. But Hopefully we don't get too punished for that. Opponent does have Harpies to clear the board, and they're going to bring out DD Warrior Lady. So luckily we don't get too punished. It's not a Don's Luke here. We still will lose the Marauding though, which is kind of unfortunate. We're going to reborn out the Terrorking here to deal with the DD Warrior Lady. We're just going to normal summon out the Marauding Captain. No real reason to use its effect because we want to keep the Deathstroke in hand to insulate the Terrorking. And I'm feeling ultimately pretty good about this. You know, each of us has 3 cards. Of course, worst case scenario would be if they summon out Don's Luke, hit over the Marauding Captain. But I do think it's worth it because we just got to get in damage. Our opponent was able to get such a big advantage on us early on that we do kind of need to just push here. Opponent does have Raigeki. We do have the Deathstroke to bring back the Terrorking. Now we just got a Terrorking and a Dream here. Our opponent's going to set one, pass back to us. We draw Raigeki, which is pretty decent. We do have to pay for Terrorking's maintenance cost, but 8 in return is not that bad, especially when we're this high up on life points. Opponent does have Mirror Force, though, so that will clear the Terrorking. I mean, it kind of is what it is. We had to just go for it there, and unfortunately, we got punished. We're going to set the Raigeki because we do know about the Don Slugan deck, so we don't want them to send that Zalug, hit in directly, and pitch the card out of our hand. Unfortunately, we get a bit punished for that because they do have Breaker, so they will pop the Raigeki and attack in for 16 here. And then they're going to pass back to us. We draw Mirage, which is about the best thing that we could draw there. We're going to pass back to them, and we do get to draw 4 off Mirage. We draw MST as well, which is pretty great. Our opponent's going to set 2, fire Mirage of their own. We do draw a second MST, so we will be able to clear both these Mirages. Although, you know, unfortunately, our hand is not the best here. We're just going to set an IO, set change. Unfortunately, we got this Break of a Pandemonium in hand. You know, that is a flaw when playing these sorts of jank strategies. You do potentially draw your combo bricks. So that did happen here. Unfortunately, our opponent's going to bring out another monster, press the offensive here, get in for 2,600, pass back to us. We draw Painful Choice here. We're going to fire that Painful Choice, send double Rhoda, and think about exactly what to send here. We're going to send Archfiend Soldier, as that is a monster to stick on field and attack in for more damage, and then send 2 DD Warrior Ladies. The idea here is that we can always set a DD Warrior Lady. They can't get over that easily. Next turn, we can potentially switch to attack into the Sangan. And if they give us Archfiend Soldier, we can summon that Archfiend Soldier, fire Pandemonium, and, you know, I mean, we don't have another Deathstroke. We do have another Deathstroke in deck, actually. So, yeah, that will get us a search there, and it won't be the worst thing in the world. Although we will indeed lose the game if they clear whatever monster we bring out. So maybe the Archfiend Soldier was a bit greedy there. But luckily, they gave us the DD Warrior Lady. And we're going to think about exactly what to do here, but we do not just attack into something that they might have. We've seen that they're on Sakuretsu armor, so we don't want to play into that. And so we'll just set 1, pass back to them. They're going to fire Change of Heart on our set. We've got IO, so that will indeed stop the change, which is pretty good. They're going to attack into our set. It's DD Warrior Lady. They're going to Fire Blast with Change, so we will indeed banish those. They'll attack in 4,000 off the Sangan. And they're just going to set 1, pass back to us. And we draw Duo, which unfortunately won't quite do it. So yeah, this is a rough hand for us. We'll just have to let the IO go, and then we'll set the Duo, pass back to our opponent. Nothing we can really do. We just got to hope they don't draw a monster here. And they do draw a monster. It doesn't quite have enough life points to kill us here, but this will effectively do that as we can't draw an out to this. So that will indeed be the end of the game. Kind of unfortunate here. I think if I had gone more aggressive game 1, we could have potentially won. But game 2, I think we were losing pretty much either way. Maybe if we had sent, you know, one more better thing off Painful. I don't know. It's kind of tricky. But I do think that, you know, this was kind of a lost game here after a while, but we did manage to stabilize after the pot Graceful, which was kind of wild. And I do think it does show how this deck can actually manage to sort of hold on for a while, and just being able to bring back your Terrorking constantly is very, very good. But it's one of the only game that I played with this deck, so let's dive into the next game that I've got to show for y'all. Okay, we got another game with the Archfiends playing against Soul65, a frequent guest on the channel. Always a pleasure to have them on. And if you ever want to be featured in these videos in the future, I get these duels through the YGO from Zero Discord server. Link in the description down below. Great place to find games in any of the formats that I've featured on the channel. So our opponent's going to go first. So they won the rock, paper, scissors. They've got Pot of Greed here. They'll draw 2. They've got Graceful again. And second time, you know, playing this deck where we get Pot Graceful. Maybe it's this deck's curse. I mean, I don't know. But it is what it is. I mean, it can happen in this format. So our opponent's going to set 2, pass back to us. And we've got a pretty good opener. We can summon up Marauding, bring a Terrorking, attack over their set. So we are indeed going to do that. I think I maybe should have fired the Forceful Sentry first, but I kind of wanted to save it for after I made this play to see what they've got. But, you know, normally you'd save Forceful Sentry until after you attacked into a set monster, because it could be a Sangan or Witch and it could get a search. But Terrorking will negate that monster, so Yeah, I probably should have just fired Forceful here to know if I should have made this aggressive play or not, but I think it's ultimately fine. We're going to attack in with Terrorking, attack in with Marauding Captain here. We're going to fire the Forceful in main 2. Look at what they got to work with. It looks like they're on a bit of a combo deck here. They've got Jinzo, Fiber Jar, Guild Source, Metamorphosis, and Dark Hole. Bit of a tricky situation for us. I think we actually want to send back the... So it's kind of awkward. So if our opponent brings, like, fires Dark Hole, sets Fiber Jar, then we don't really have a way to deal with it. We'd have to, like, summon out Sangan or DD Warley to attack into it, but then, you know, we reset the game state and we don't have a normal summon. And if they're playing Guild Source, I feel like they're potentially on a Scientist OTK deck in here as well, and we don't necessarily want to open ourselves up to that. So I feel like we do want to send back Fiber Jar. It's kind of awkward because, you know, maybe we should have sent back Dark Hole. That might have been a better choice here. But if we send back Dark Hole, they summon out Guild Source, tribute off Jinzo, attack into our Terrorking. And again, we sort of lost our way to deal with Fiber Jar here. Yeah, so it's a bit tricky. I do think Fiber Jar is the best pick here. Because they clear our board with, like, Dark Hole, and then bring out Guild Source, tribute out Jinzo. We got DD Worley to deal with Jinzo. And yeah, so I think it's ultimately fine. But I do think about this for quite a bit. And I do indeed send back the Fiber. Yeah, I think it would either the Fiber or the Dark Hole here. And I think that there are reasonable arguments to make for either. So we send back that Fiber Jar, set the Mirror Force, pass back to them. They've got MST for the Mirror Force. That's fine. We've got ways to deal with whatever they can bring out otherwise. They're going to fire the Dark Hole indeed. And we will indeed lose our board here. And they're going to bring out a Guild Source, special summoning it out, so we will be able to get a monster back, and we're just going to bring back the Terrorking. They tribute off for Jinzo, but, you know, this is fine. We brought out the Terrorking in attack because in case they drew, like, a monster with over 1500 attack, like a Skilled White Magician, we didn't want them to just, you know, get more field presence by something that's Skilled White, attacking over Terrorking in defense, and then tagging directly for Jinzo. And we're fine taking 400 here. That is not that big of a deal. And we do want the Jinzo on field, so that way we can banish it with the Warrior Lady. Opponent's going to set the meta, and also they're going to fire Mirage. That is about the best draw they could have gotten here. The only, like, saving grace of this is that we know that they don't have an MST set, so they just got to sort of hope that they draw MST here. They're going to draw 4, and we're just going to, you know, sort of do cleanup duty. Summon out this DD Warley, attack into the Jinzo here, banish that, and just get that out of the way. If, you know, they don't keep a monster here, if they don't have MST, then I feel like we're in a pretty decent spot. And it looks like they're just going to let us pick what to discard. So we're going to pick one for them to keep here. We're going to keep that one. They're going to pitch 4, and they will indeed, think about this a bit, just fire a Reborn here, bring back a Catapult Turtle, and then firing off a Metamorphosis here. And this is very, very strong. They can bring out Dark Bolter, which is basically Terrorking on steroids, because this card also negates normal spells, which is very, very powerful in this format. Opponent's going to attack in with 2,000, and this is really bad given the hand we've got right now. We do draw reinforcements, so this does actually get us out of it a little bit. We can either reinforcements for an exiled force here, or we can reinforcements for a Marauding Captain, and that is indeed what we're going to do. Marauding Captain can bring out the Terrorking that we've got in hand, and we can just crash our Terrorking into their Dark Bolter here, and then get in for 1,200. And I do think that is the better choice overall. Attack in for 1,200, pass back to them. They're going to think about this, and they do have the MSC, so they're going to get rid of that Mirage. And now they got to think about exactly what to do here. They're going to set 2, pass back to us. We draw DD Warrior Lady, and now we kind of have 2 options here. We could either just attack in with the Marauding Captain, in case it's like a Fiber Jar, that's the best option. Or we could summon out DD Warrior Lady, attack into that. If it's like Sangan, that's the best option. They've got Witch of the Black Forest engraved, so realistically, I'm only really afraid of, like, if they've got Sangan set. So really, it's just a pick between, like, whether they've got Sangan set or whether they've got a Fiber Jar set. And I choose to play around Fiber Jar as I think it's more devastating for us if we summon out DD Worthy and attack into a Fiber Jar than if we just attack over a Sangan here. Because they can Sangan search something out, potentially search out like a Magical Scientist. But if they search out Magical Scientist, you know, if they commit that next turn and just bring out, like, I don't know, Dark Flare Knight, attack over our Marauding Captain, attack in directly, then we can clear the Scientist on the next turn with our Sangan. So I don't really think that that's that big of a threat. So I'm just going to attack in with the Marauding Captain here. It is indeed the Sangan, so we do get punished for our choice. And they will indeed search out the Magical Scientist. But again, I'm not too concerned about this. Scientist on its own is not the biggest threat here. And our opponent's going to think about this a bit, and they're going to bring out Scientist, fire off 1,000, and bring out Dragoness, the Wicked Knight. And this is actually a pretty slick play on our opponent's part. They're going to fire a Last Will here, attack into Marauding Captain, and that will crash, so our opponent will be able to bring out a Cannon Soldier off that. That is important as it tells us they're likely only playing one Catapult Turtle, or else they probably would have brought out Catapult Turtle as more damage here. But with the Cannon Soldier, they actually do just win here either way. They attack in for 17, and if they pay 4 times for Scientist and tribute off the monster that they bring out with Cannon Soldier, that will indeed exactly be 3,000 damage. They actually do win the game here if they see that line, and luckily for us, they do think about it, and they do not actually see that line. So I feel really good about this. We draw Mirage as well, which is just superb. So we might be able to pull this one out of the gutter. We're going to summon that saying in, attack over Scientist. That will go through. We're going to fire Mirage, pass back to them. We do draw 3 off this Mirage. Oh, no, we don't, I guess. They've got IO here. They do have to pay for the IO in case they want to shut off the Mirage. And they're actually just going to choose to let the IO go. Okay, so I guess they wasted the IO. That's a bit risky, but I guess, oh, actually, this is just the end of the game here either way. So it not matter one way or the other with the IO. So that will indeed be the end of the game because they take control of Sangan, attack it for 24, tribute off their board to deal the remaining 600. So that will indeed be the end of the game there. Very, very intense game one, though. Very cool to see. And again, very slick play on our opponent's part with the Dragoness. Very, very cool to see there. But we're going to go in to game 2 here. For game 2, I actually make some pretty radical siding decisions because if they're on like a Scientist OTK package, I sort of want to bring in the hand rips. I also want to bring in things that can disrupt their game plan. So I bring in the hand rips, I bring in torrentials. I actually side out of the Pandemonium package because I figure I'm not going to be in a grind game against this deck. It's a combo-oriented deck, very aggressive. So, you know, I'm not going to be sort of getting the incremental advantage off the Pandemoniums, searching out the Deathrooks and things like that. So I take out the Pandemoniums, I take out the Terraforming, and I also take out the Archfiend's Roar, as again, that's a late game card. And this game will likely be decided in the early game, given that's the sort of deck that our opponent's playing. So we do bring in the hand rips. We bring in, like, let's see, what else do we bring in? Because we bring in the hand rips, that's 2 cards. We bring in 3 Torrential Tributes. That's what we bring in, because that's very good at disrupting their plays. So we're going to fire a Forceful here to start off. Look at what they've got in hand. They've got Last Will, Reasoning, Gillosaurus, Fiber Jar, and Cannon Soldier here. A bit of a tricky choice. We might want to take the Reasoning, as that gets them something potentially from deck, which could be annoying for us. I think, though, Last Will is the most threatening card here. We could potentially just send back Cannon Soldier, shut off Last Will, but there are many things that they likely play to trigger Last Will here. So I don't necessarily want to do that. Fiber Jar is annoying, but we've got Terror King and Raigeki to deal with Fiber Jar, so I'm not concerned about that. Yeah, I think we do just want to send back the Will. Will is the most annoying card in their hand, I think, just because of the combos that they can pull off with it. So we shuffle that back into the deck, and then we're just going to set a DD Warlord, set MST, pass back to them. They're going to draw here. Think about this a bit and fire a Reasoning. We just call 4 as that's the most likely option. And, you know, I'm not concerned about them getting, like, a, you know, Catapult Turtle or a Scientist as much. You know, if they get Scientist, that's annoying, but we've got Marauding plus Terror King to deal with that. If they get Turtle, that is absolutely fine. They don't have Last Will in hand, likely. So, yeah, I just call a 4, because that's the most likely option. And unfortunately, they hit a 6, which is, you know, it gets the monster on field here. But ultimately, it's not too bad for us, as this DD Warrior Lady can banish that. So I feel pretty good about this. Our opponent's going to think about this a bit. Set 2, pass back to us. We just got MST in the end phase just to deal with what they've got. And then Terror King should be able to deal with their set, which is very likely a Fiber Jar here. We draw Graceful. We could hold the Graceful, because we've got a great hand already. But, I don't know. I kind of want to see what I get here. I think this might have been a mistake, but, you know, we draw Tribe, Comfy, and Torrential Tribute here. Tribe and Comfy are kind of not the best here. Tribe, because we've got a board set up here either way, so we don't really need it. Comfy, because we know what their hand is, like, or at least we know 1 card left in their hand. Actually, we know the whole hand, because MST was the new card drawn. So, yeah, we don't really need to fire the Comfy here. So I actually will just pitch the Tribe and the Comfy here. Bring up Marauding, special summon out this Terror King here, hit over their set, and attack in with Marauding here, getting in for 1,200. We're just going to set a Torrential Tribute, pass back to them, and see what they do. They're going to think about this a bit. They are indeed going to special summon out Gillosaurs here that will bring back this tribe here, which means they likely have a way to deal with our board. They're going to bring out Cannon Soldier. I mean, they got to have Raigeki. That's the only reason why they do this, but there's no reason for us to fire Tribute here, as that lets them keep the Raigeki. And yep, they do indeed have it, so that's just going to go through. They attack in for 2,800. We've got the Raigeki to clear their board next turn anyways, so I feel like this is fine. We draw Witch here. We fire Raigeki, clear their board, summon out Witch, attack in for 1,100 here, and then we'll just pass back to them. They're going to set one, pass back to us. We draw Reborn here, which could be really good. We might just want to go for it, given that, you know, we can put them in a really tough spot. However, we don't really necessarily want to play into Torrential. And I can save the Reborn for like a game shot relatively soon. So we're just going to attack in with 1,100, pass back to them. They're going to just pass back to us. We draw Reinforcing the Army, which is really good. We can actually go for game here. We're going to Reinforce the Army, bring out a Marauding Captain here. It may seem a bit weird, as it's less high value than something like DD Warlord or Exiled, but we're trying to go for our game shot here, so we want to take out the sort of least impact warrior from our deck. We're then going to Reborn, target the Cannon Soldier, that will indeed go through here, and we'll be able to attack in for 2,300, 3,700, and then tribute off the remaining monsters with Cannon Soldier to potentially end the game, and that will indeed go through. So I feel really good about that. And yep, that set was MNC. They're going to fire that to get information here for game 3, and instead of Torrential Tribute, which, you know, they didn't know about, so they did get some information here. But I mean, that is a common side deck card against these sort of combo sort of scientist decks, so that will indeed be game 2, and I think that was a pretty good showing for the deck. I mean, we didn't get to pull off the Pandemonium Desrook stuff, but I feel like the deck was strong enough even without that. I mean, we had Terrorking to deal with the Fiber Jar, and Terrorking was just an annoying card in general for our opponent to deal with. So, you know, I liked that game too. I thought it felt pretty good. And we're just going to go into game 3 here. We do side out the Hand Rips, I believe, to bring in Double Gnomon of Crossout and Harpies, as those are better going second than the Hand Rips are. Maybe I should have kept the Hand Rips in because, you know, they are on a combo deck, and being able to take out the combo pieces from their hand is really good. But I do think that, like, at an opening turn, you know, they might just set a monster or just set a bunch of back row. Harpies and Gnomon really punish that a lot. So I want to bring those in for going second. We're going to be going second here, and this isn't like the best opening hand, but it is pretty decent. We got Fiber Jar, which can be pretty important as a self-destruct button, or not a self-destruct button, but a reset button. Opponent's going to start with a Skilled White Magician here, go for Graceful Charity. So it looks like they're trying to trigger the Skilled White effect here, turn 1. That's the only reason why you'd really commit a monster before firing Graceful. Opponent's going to bring back a monster with Monster Reborn here, and then fire a Last Will, so that will indeed trigger the Skilled White here, bring out a Buster Blader. They will get another search off the Last Will. So really sick opening turn combo. This is a very, very formidable board. If we clear it with like Raigeki or Dark Hole, then they get 2 searches here. So it isn't even really the best for us. But luckily we do have this Fiber Jar here, so that will indeed potentially allow us to recover from this. And, you know, we just set the MST. I think we could have also set the Change of Heart. But my fear is if they go for, like, Harpy's Feather here, clearing our cards, and then go for, like, a Scientist, then we want the Change of Heart for later to take control of the Scientist and clear their board that way. But, you know, it's debatable. I might, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I should just set both in case they have, like, an MST plus Scientist. But yeah, I mean, luckily we do get rewarded for this play. They're just going to, you know, not commit anything else to board, attack in with the Buster Blader here. And it is indeed Fiber Jar, so that we'll shuffle everything back. Now, since they haven't committed anything to board, you know, they do get a normal summoner set here, so that's pretty good for them. But I feel pretty good about this. We, you know, cleared their very tricky board there, and while they can potentially set up another, they only have 5 cards in hand to do it as opposed to 6. So our opponent's going to summon a Scientist here, kind of interesting, very vulnerable. They're going to fire a Last Will, go for card destruction here. I really don't like this play. Yeah, I really don't like this play. I think it would have been better to keep the Scientist in hand, set Reborn, set Last Will, and then go for card destruction. Because, you know, you're drawing the same amount of cards that you would be otherwise, but you also have Reborn to bring back Scientist if you do have the combo. Yeah, this is just, like, really unfortunate. Because if they don't draw a way to capitalize off the Last Will or the Scientist, then they've just, like, wasted a bunch of their cards. So, yeah, I think that was not the right way to structure that turn. They do have reasoning here. So they bring out, like, a turtle or a cannon soldier, they do potentially win the game here. Yeah, they do. Well, cannon soldier won't quite win them the game. But, if they bring out Cannon Soldier, they contribute that off, bring out Catapult Turtle. So that will indeed win them the game. So I have to think about exactly what to bring out or what to call here. I do just call 4 as, again, from game 1, I think they're only on 1 Catapult Turtle. So I do think that, they're more likely to be on multiple Cannon Soldier than, multiple Catapult Turtle here. So you just call 4. Hopefully that hits. Unfortunately, they hit a Buster Blader. So that will get them a powerful monster on the field here. But again, they sort of wasted the Last Will and Reborns. Or, yeah, I mean, I don't know. This feels like super awkward. But, Buster Blade is still a very strong card here. So a bit scary. We're going to go for Pot of Greed here. Draw 2. And we're just going to fire MST on the back row. We've got an additional MST for our Mirage here, so I'm feeling fine about that. And we're just going to bring out this DD Warrior Lady, attack in to the Scientist. We're not going to banish because we want the DD Warrior Lady on field to threaten the Blader. And then we're just going to set our hand, fire Mirage, pass back to our opponent. Mirage will draw us 3 cards here, and those are pretty good ones. We are going to, okay, our opponent's just going to pass back to us. I feel very good about that. We're just going to fire MST on the Mirage here. And I think I actually can set up a painful line to win us the game here. It will take some thinking, but eventually I do indeed figure out a line. So I fire painful here. And I think a bit about this. I've sent Change of Heart because, if we Change of Heart their Buster Blader, Reborn back their Injection Fairy Lily, we just win the game that way. I send a Ring of Destruction because with Ring of Destruction, I can, Reborn their Injection Fairy Lily, call the Haunted back a Terror King, because I am going to send 2 Terror Kings, so there'll be 1 grave either way. And, if I attack over the Buster Blader, attack in for 15, attack in for 2,000 there, then that will be 39. Okay, that actually won't quite do it. But if I attack in with DD War Lady, take 11, attack in for, yeah, that will do it. So if I attack in with DD War Lady, Buster Blader, attack in directly with Injecting Fairly, attack in directly with Terror King that I bring off of the Call of the Haunted, then that will be 5400 damage. Ring will deal an additional 2000 popping Terror King, because it only, applies the negation effect if it's your opponent's card effect that targets this card. So you can indeed target it with your own stuff and be fine. So I send those 2 Terror Kings. If they give me a Terror King, I call the Haunted back a Terror King, summon out a Terror King, Reborn the Injection Fairy Lily, and attack DD Warrior Lady into the Buster Blader, and that deals, that will deal 7,400 points of damage total. So that will also be the end of the game. And also I send a Raigeki, Reborning back a Injection Fairy Lily, call the Haunting back a Terror King here. That will indeed be the end of the game, because that's 5,400 plus 1,500, so that is 6,900. So no matter what our opponent gives us here, we do indeed win, which is why Painful Choice is such a powerful card, especially if you get into these sorts of simplified game states like this. You can turn the game into a bit of a puzzle, where you've got 5 cards in deck that do win you the game. You just need to figure out what those are. So our opponent's going to give us a Terror King here, and that is perfectly fine. As I said, we do win the game here. We Reborn the Lily. We call the Haunted back a Terror King here. We summon out a Terror King here and just attack into the Buster Blader with the DD Warrior Lady, and this will be more than enough to win the game here. So very, very intense game 3 here. And honestly, I think this match does show Archfiend's strength, even if you're not like going all in on the Pandemonium and Archfiend's Roar stuff. I mean, game 3, we weren't playing Pandemonium or Archfiend's Roar. Terror Kings did come up, and they were pretty good here. I mean, you could say that any sort of big beater would have done the same thing here, and, you might be right. But the fact that we are playing these 3 big beaters did enable us to make this play. So I do think that the Archfiend package is something to consider in a variety of decks, and there are a lot of different ways that you can play this deck. I mean, we opted for sort of a Warrior and Archfiend mix. You could go for more of a pure Archfiend build, not necessarily playing the Marauding Captains and things, but playing just more Archfiends like Archfiend Soldier, Infernal Queen Archfiend, etc. I think this deck is really, really sick. I really hope people continue to experiment with it in this format, as I do think that there is something here, and it can be very, very threatening for your opponent to deal with. It does take a bit of an adapting to, as you saw in game 1, you do kind of have to go a bit more aggressive than you normally would. But I do think that the reward is worth it, and it can be a very, very threatening deck in the right hands. But what do you think about this deck? Do you think that I'm sort of overrating the Archfiend deck, or do you think that it's actually much better than I'm making out to be, and that if you build this deck differently, it could potentially be even better? Let me know down in the comments below. Also, if you enjoy this sort of content, please be sure to subscribe. I also do have a Patreon now, link in the description down below. So if you do want to support me, that is the best place to do so. And also, on my Patreon, I've got a poll for like what perks people would like to see on that Patreon. So if you're interested in that, definitely head on over and vote in that poll. But that'll be it for this video. I hope that you all enjoyed as always. And until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero, and I'm signing off.